welcome to the Rome-Med dialogue with Josep Borrell Fontelles, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. I'm joined by Jan Lesser, Vice President of the German Marshall Fund, and Maha Yahya, Director of Carnegie, Lebanon. Welcome back, High Representative. When we last met, you said you would come to Rome even with a scafandro, which is a diving suit. Unfortunately, we are not able to welcome you even with the scafandro, but we will welcome you next year. And thank Ian and Maha. High Representative, this year marks the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona Declaration. You were a Spanish minister at that time, and you were in Barcelona last week for the celebration as High Representative. At that time, our ambition to promote an area of stability and prosperity were dampened by conflicts and tensions. After 20 years, conflict, tensions, and division are still with us, possibly even strengthened by the pandemic as it has appeared clearly over the last 10 days at the Rome-Med dialogues. Will, High Representative, Europe be able to keep pace with this rather gloomy scenario?
Well, thank you. That's right. I haven't been able to go to Rome. We haven't been able to gather in Rome. That's a big pity. Let's work in order to be able to do that next occasion, maybe not even next year. Before than that, I hope to have the pleasure to meet in person with you and to enjoy Italy. Well, it's not only the Europeans who has to be able to keep pace. It's all the Mediterraneans, the North and the South. The Mediterranean is an extraordinary region of diversity of cultures, exchanges, not much of trade, commercial trade, but trade of ideas and human diversity and experiences. It's the cradle of civilization. Yes, 25 years ago, it was in Barcelona. We gave ourselves an ambitious goal. We wanted to create an area of peace, shared prosperity, and human and cultural exchanges. 25 years later, the region has become less stable, challenges have multiplied, the gap in security and prosperity between the two shores of the Mediterranean is still too wide, increasingly too wide. The gap is increasing, it's not closing, becoming bigger. This is a reality that we in the European Union cannot ignore and that we have to respond to. The average GDP per capita, it's 16 times higher in our part of the Mediterranean than in the South Mediterranean. 16 times higher, and it is increasing. We have the instruments, we have the vision, we say that we have the determination to connect the two shores more closely together, but it's not the case. Last week in Barcelona, we again had a frank exchange on how to go closer among us. I underline the need to increase investment, to offer opportunities for the youth. I talk about the gap on wealth. I could talk about the demographic gap, which is as much as bigger as the economic one. They are becoming younger and younger, and we are becoming older and older. If you put both things together, you can imagine the combination. On the other side, human rights, rule of law, good governance should not just nice talking points, and we stress this. And during Barcelona process, we also said that, but we were supporting dictatorships in the north of Africa until the Africa Spring came. And I am every day more convinced that these things are preconditions for a peaceful and prosperous future. I said the challenges in the region have multiplied. and new conflicts have surfaced. The old conflicts are still there and have prevented the integration and development of the region. The old conflict, well, the oldest one, the Eastern Mediterranean, Syria, has come back stronger. The Israeli-Palestine conflict is still there. No good prospects. Well, let's see with Biden, but with Trump, it was completely blocked. So we said that we need to resume efforts to solve these conflicts. We Europeans, we have been helping the populations to deal with the consequences of conflicts, not with the conflicts themselves, but the humanitarian and economic consequences of these conflicts. But now we have to solve the conflicts themselves. We have to involve more in the resolution from the Middle East peace process to Syria and Libya. 5 years ago, Turkey and Russia were not present in Central Mediterranean, and now they are the masters of the game. We live in a multipolar world in which there are many backroom deals between a few players that are imposed to others. That's what we call the Astanization process. No? Russia and Turkey, first they are separated, then they converge on their interests, and then they agree on sharing influence. This has happened in Syria, is happening in Libya, this has happened also in the Caucasus. But no one other actor can compete with us, with the European Union, in supporting negotiated political solutions. And it has to be in close coordination with the United Nations, because both in Libya or in Syria, or in Cyprus, with respect to Turkey, we need to work with the United Nations. Alone is not enough.
Thank you, Our Representative. Let me move briefly to Iran. President Biden has promised to go back to the nuclear agreement, but he may want or may be forced, internally or externally, to ask for more. Minister Zarif made clear yesterday at Rome Med that for Iran, there is nothing to renegotiate, but just the need to have US implement the previous agreement. How do you see the future of the agreement, and does Europe have a plan to overcome these obstacles?
Well, if I were on the shoes of Minister Zarif, with whom I've been talking recently, I would say the same thing. Honestly, it was a deal. The Iranians fulfilled their part of the deal until the American withdrawal. And the International Nuclear Energy Agency has certified this very clearly. The Iranians made the deal and they fulfilled their part of the deal until the Americans' withdrawal destroyed the possibility of fulfilling the other part of the deal. So they haven't got the economic reward that were part of the deal. It's not just a nuclear deal, it's a dough desk. And they did, and we haven't been able to fulfill our part. And this has been probably the major source of disagreement between the European Union and the US over the last years. And during my first year in turn, I've been working a lot in order to keep the JCPOA alive. Because we said, no, okay, you leave, but we are not going to leave. We will try to keep the JCPOA alive and calling the Iranians to fulfill all their obligations, to go back to full fulfillment. And we have tried, but we haven't succeeded. We haven't succeeded in offering their economic counterparts because the American sanctions were too powerful and too many European Union firms were not able to face the risk of being under this sanction regime, and they stopped working with Iran. President-elected Biden has promised during the campaign that the US will go back to the JCPOA, but it will not be easy. Many obstacles lie ahead. First, domestic opposition. Well, not so easy as to go back to the Paris Climate Agreement. Opposition from the US key allies in the region, Iranian elections next year. There are some people who are trying to put as many obstacles as possible in order to this deal to be revamped. Does the European Union have a plan for overcoming these obstacles? Yes, we have a plan. And it goes through our continuous commitment. I have already called for a ministerial meeting at the ministerial level of the JCPOA before the end of the year. I hope it can take place. And then we will see if the really US is willing to go back to the plan. And we will see if the Iranians now, they are in a situation that they will also, that the Americans come back to the plan, because there have been quite a lot of disappointment from their part and quite a lot of mistrust. And to have to rebuild trust among the parties, it will be not so easy.
Thank you. Let me now turn to Maha for her first question and then to Ian. Maha.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, High Commissioner. Just following up on the issue of the Barcelona process, I wanted to ask about human rights, because it seems to have become a forgotten issue in Europe's relations with much of the world, but more specifically with the Arab world and Iran. And yet this was one dimension of the former Barcelona process. So has Europe really given up on pushing for human rights progress, especially at a time when there is an authoritarian resurgence in the region, and there's also this considerable concern with threats from resurgent jihadi movements?
Believe me, when I'm saying no, you didn't expect me to say yes, huh? No. I'm saying no is a honest answer. Just today, the Council has approved, well, the Council will be approving on its meeting on Monday, but it has already been approved at the technical level, and the European framework for sanctions against human rights. It will be overall a global framework for sanctioning human rights abuses. I've been working a lot during my first year in office in order to have this agreement, a lot of controversy between member states, Commission, Council, and battle of competences. At the end, there is an agreement, and the Council will approve it, and we will have a global framework, not a particular framework for each case, but a comprehensive and global one from Monday. Okay. And we are an institution whose foreign policy will always be guided by interests and principles. Principles and values, that's what the treaty says. The treaty commands me to try to build a foreign policy based both on interest and values. We don't hide that we have also our interest, and it's part of the guiding forces of our foreign policy. We are not angels, but principles also count, also matters. I think this is in our DNA, and it is in our founding text. But at the same time, human rights continue to be under attack in many parts of the world. There are too many serious human rights violations and abuses. Too frequently, perpetrators do not face any consequences. This is unacceptable. You just take the newspaper every day and you see here and there what's happening. So adopting this global human rights sanction regime, I will put my medal on that because I promised to do it in my hearing at the European Parliament, and now it's to be implemented. I think it's a tangible and concrete step. It's a major initiative, and this regime will be enabling us to take action when needed, not in a country-specific basis, as I said, but on a comprehensive way. For sure, we can do what we can do. We are not like the US. We don't and we can, but we don't to implement extraterritorial laws. You know? We will not do this kind of things because we don't believe it's a good way of proceeding. We refuse the US implementation of extraterritorial laws, and we will not follow them on that. We target individuals and entities, state and non-state actors, travel bans, access frozen, perpetrators and their associated can be banned from entering the EU, their assets frozen, and persons prohibited from making any funds available to them. But we are not in favor of the sanctions that harms the population, like Americans in Iran and Venezuela. To be frank and honest, I don't think the European Union has to do on this side, putting sanctions that affect not only the perpetrators of human rights abuses, but the whole population, because the social cost is too high.
Thank you, High Commissioner. I turn now to Ian. Ian, you have the floor.
Paolo, thank you very much. High Representative, maybe I could follow up on your brief mention about Turkey to ask you a more specific question about this. How you see the evolution of the relationship with Turkey? I'm thinking about the upcoming council meeting and some decisions that may be taken there or not, but also how, just some thoughts from your side on how to get out of this dangerous brinkmanship in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Brinkmanship.
Yeah. That's the way I would put it.
Shock, in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah. How do we exit from that dangerous situation? How do you see the relationship with Turkey evolving? Are you confident that you can turn the page on this, or is this something that is structural and hard to change?
No, certainly, it's one of the toughest situations that we have to deal with. The last European Union Council decided to see even the following month it could be a kind of engagement, a positive engagement from the side of Turkey side, and to judge the developments according with a more positive attitude. The least I can say is that, it has not been the case. There is not very much positive signals that came from Turkey during this month, both in Cyprus and on the drillings. The talks between Greece and Turkey hasn't not been developing. All that creates a situation in which the European Council once again will have to decide how to take care of the situation with Turkey. I am strongly convinced that Turkey and the European Union has a common interest on developing a good neighborhood. Turkey is there, they will still be there. It has regional ambitions, and we have to understand that Turkey also is hosting 3.5 million refugees from Syria that we have to help to take care of them, and we are doing, and we will have to continue doing that, because the help is not to the Turkish government, but to the Syrian refugees. But we need to ask for a better engagement in order to solve the territorial waters disputes, to respect the sovereign waters of Cyprus and Greece, and to look for a better understanding of how to share the revenues of the gas fields. Turkey is also asking for it. When I talk with my friend, my colleague, the External Foreign Affairs Minister of Turkey, he's also asking for it. But in practical terms, when it comes to the actions from one side, there is not a positive engagement. So its time has come in order to put on the table if we could have a better partnership and neighborhood, or If it is not possible, the European Union Council will have to take the decision that only the European Union can take, because the sanction regime, it's a matter of the member states. So let's see what we can do next European Union Council. I cannot advance the result of the discussion. I'm just preparing it and offering alternatives.
Thank you. I fear, High Commissioner, a representative, that Turkey will be one of the hotspots in our European will to match principle and interest, the one you mentioned. So it will be interesting to watch development in the next few months. But let me turn to Maha for a second question, please.
Sorry. I was having problems with the unmute. High Commissioner, just to maybe turn back to Lebanon, I asked you about this at the last time we met, which is, what can the EU do to break the perennial deadlock in the country? And especially because if this persists, Lebanon will sink even deeper into the abyss. We're likely to have a failed state, even though this term is being used and abused, but basically another problem country on the other side of the Mediterranean. So how seriously does the EU take this? And is there any kind of contingency planning taking place beyond the humanitarian aid? And I guess I'll tag onto it here, a sub-question which is related to the French agenda, because the French obviously are the ones who've been pushing for some sort of support for Lebanon on both the political but also on the economic front. But this is part of a larger agenda for the Middle East. So how does this tag into the EU agenda for the region? Or does the EU, go along in some places and not in others?
¿Cómo se llama una varita mágica, no?
Magic wand.
¿Cómo?
Magic wand.
A wand.
Magic wand, huh? No, you don't have a magic wand.
Sometimes I believe people believe that they should have one of these magic wands somewhere in my drawer. Can use them. No? Why the European Union is going? Well, I have limited powers, limited capacities, a lot of goodwill. But and when it comes to problems like Lebanon, just a couple of days ago, I participated in another big video conference with more than 40 people participating, convened by the French president, Mr. Macron, with a lot of goodwill in order to look again at Lebanon. No? What can we do? But we are always ready to continue our support to Lebanon. Mm. But it is imperative that the Lebanese help us to help them. We need a government that will take forward an agenda of key structural reforms that need to be implemented as soon as possible. A government that will resume negotiations with IMF. This is the priorities of the priorities. An agreement with the IMF. Without an agreement with the IMF, we cannot even engage more financial resources, because we ask for the IMF agreement as a precondition to come us with our resources. We did our part during last year. We helped Lebanon to address the pandemic. We delivered humanitarian assistance following the Beirut harbor blast on the 4th of August. And we mobilized 170 million of emergency humanitarian need help. So we have been helping, we stand ready to do more, but we cannot appear there and act as we were the government of Lebanon, because we are not, and we don't want to. When I've been talking with some people in Lebanon, they were shocked by the incredible amount of mistrust about the political class, about the politicians or political parties. No, I remember someone telling me, "Please don't call for elections. Send me a manager. Send us managers." It was something terrifying, when people say they don't want elections, they want to be sent a manager, someone in which they could trust and he's not going to run with the money. So I think that there is big problems, the political structure of Lebanon that only the Lebanese can solve. We have to push them, we have to condition them, we have to tell them that nothing is for free, ready to help, but being at the same time very much demanding on the way they organize their political life. But we cannot substitute the Lebanese on organizing their country, because then we go back to a condominium of United Nations, or we go back to a kind of neo-colonialism. This is not the case. I can say the same thing about many other places in the world. Institutions building is the most difficult thing. You can build a road, you can distribute sacks of food. To build institutions is something, and to have the trust of the population in these institutions is the most difficult thing. This cannot be done from outside.
Ian.
Paolo, thank you. High Representative, maybe I could ask you a question that relates to this very fashionable debate about strategic autonomy. And thinking about the new US administration and these needs in the Mediterranean. Do you see the EU's policy in the Mediterranean is in some ways being a key test case for this aspiration to strategic autonomy? These are places, after all, that Europe is deeply engaged, can reach, etc. And how just that balance between American cooperation with the United States and European initiative on some of the issues we've been talking about, whether it's Turkey or North Africa or other things. I mean, how do you see that kind of the southern dimension of strategic autonomy, if I can put it that way?
Well, I just finished writing a 10 pages paper of my own, not from my staff. Well, they helped me in order to provoke the debate on the next foreign affairs country on this issue. How do I see that? No? And how strategic autonomy matters. You know, strategic autonomy is not another magic wand. No? And now I take the strategic autonomy wand from my drawer in order to solve problems. It's a process. It's a process that will take time. It's a need, and it's nothing against anyone. Every time I'm saying strategic autonomy, there is someone raising their hand and saying, and what about NATO? Showing that there is a kind of contradiction or fight between the two concepts. If you want to be strategically autonomous, it means that you want to be a little bit out of NATO, or weakening your engagement with NATO, or weakening the transatlantic relations. I think this is a very bad approach. Look, which is the contrary of autonomy? Dependency. Do we want to be dependent? I don't think so. In fact, nobody wants to be dependent. We want to be autonomous in order to face the problems that we have to face with our capacities. Doing that together with our partners, when possible, and alone, if necessary. And I think that the European Union, who has certain degrees of autonomy on certain fields, not only on defense, would be a better partner. The problem is that this idea came from the field of defense, and it is still being considered something related with security and defense, and so with NATO, and so with the transatlantic relationship. No, today autonomy has to be considered as a polyhedric, multipolar, multidimensional approach to very much different things, starting with technology, or even with that, the masks. This is strategic, doesn't look strategic, but it became strategic at a certain moment because the global market was unable to provide the amount of masks required in a critical situation. So imagine that the same thing could happen, not with a humble mask easy to produce, but for our critical infrastructures of telecommunications. We have to be autonomous in technology in order to give answers to our own needs. We cannot be depending, not even of our good friends, our best friends, or our best trade partners, because in critical moments, you will have to be able to solve some issues by your own capacities, and because you cannot rely that everything will be solved in the framework of the NATO, because there are some problems, the relationship with China, cyber threats, what's happening in Sahel, what's happening in our immediate neighborhood, that will have to be dealt by the Europeans with a stronger own capacity. And once again, it's not only limited to defense, and it's not related to be more or less pro-transatlantic. Transatlantic relationship and autonomous strategy of Europeans, Union or the Europeans, for me, are the two sides of the same coin. Both go together. We will not be a good partner if we don't have autonomous capacities.
Thank you. Thank you, High Representative. We still have 1 minute, a couple of minutes, and after 10 days of, let me say, honestly, rather gloomy debates at Rome Med, looking at the area and what is on and what may happen after the pandemic, I would like to ask you to close with one reason of hope, one reason for a positive agenda in the region to close this terrible year for everybody and to look at next year, 2021.
You talk about the Mediterranean region.
Yeah.
Reason for hope. I think the new American administration will have a better balanced approach to the peace process in the Middle East, a more balanced approach. And this will give a chance for the negotiation between Palestinians and Israelis to restart again. I think that this can be possible, and we have to work for that. In Libya, on the last days, we have had some positive signals. Libya is a typical example where the US administration will not probably engage much, but where we, European Union, can step up and bring something to the relationship. For us, it's one of the major challenges for our security and stability, not only related with migration. I wouldn't be very happy if we have a ring of Navy bases from Turkey and Russia in front of the Italian coast. I don't think that's the kind of thing that we would like to have. So we have to end the military conflict. And by miracle, the ceasefire lasts since summer, since before the summer. Much more than in any case in the past. We have engaged with the Libyans on a political dialogue. We are supporting this United Nations-led mediation process. So we have been taking more concrete engagements, like the Operation Irini, which unhappily puts us some troubles in our relation with Turkey, but we have to continue on this side. And I see also some prospects for Syria. Nobody talks about the situation in Syria. Have you noticed that? Syria has disappeared from the radar screen. Everybody was talking about Idlib when I came here. Now Idlib is not in the papers. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. People are still there, but we have been able to provide humanitarian assistance, and things are relatively calm. So on Libya, we have to engage more, and also there is a small window of opportunity. But where I see, maybe I am too activist, not positive, not a optimist, but activist, is that I think the new administration will have a different approach to the Middle East situation. And we Europeans, we have to engage on that.
I asked for one, and after hesitating a little bit, you gave us 3, so we are grateful. High Representative, we wish you good luck for your job. We wish you had a bacchetta magica, indeed, but we know we are in safe hands with you, and thank you very much. Thank Maha, thank Jan.
Thank you to all of you. Ask Papa Noel to offer me a magic wand.
On the way. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, and thank you, High Commissioner.
Bye-bye.